Like, well, I mean, he's like, yeah, of course I support taxation. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, you know, do you have a choice in paying for those? Like, oh, this is democracy. This is democracy. Like, you know, democracy is just majority rule, right? It's 51% dominating 49. And he's like, that's not what democracy is. You need to go back to school and learn your definitions.
That'd be an interesting thing to
I'm like, that is
ask somebody too.
Well, what is democracy? Like, what is democracy?
Is democracy?
Hey, could I ask you a question real quick? What's democracy? You know the definition of democracy? It's like a little pop quiz. I just want to ask you. We're doing a little video here.
Oh, okay.
You know what democracy is?
Not really.
You know? Do you speak English?
A little bit.
You ever heard the word democracy?
Democracy?
Democracy.
The politics?
Yeah, the politics one. Democracy. Do you know what that is? Do you know like a definition of it?
The party or?
Not the Democrats, but no democracy. That's okay. No, that's fine. That's okay.
Sorry.
Let me keep that joke to myself. I was gonna say. Hey, dude. Can I ask you a question, man? We're doing a little video here. Do you know what can you define for me democracy?
What is democracy? I don't know the word.
Oh my god. It's okay, man. It's alright, bro. I gotta stop asking Asian people.
This happen a lot. Actually, yeah.
That people don't know what democracy is, or that people don't speak English. Because that did happen earlier, actually, in the red pill blue pill prank thing. Praise Jesus. All right, we have to confirm that people are still alive. Just ask. Father.
Maybe we can do a little competition.
She's on the phone. who can get somebody to define democracy first?
More of them say yes, then we have to do something, and more of them say no.
Could I ask you guys a quick question? We're doing a little video here. Do you know the definition of democracy? More or less, it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry, this isn't one of those.
What is this for?
It's from our YouTube channel.
I have to be in it. I kind of don't want to.
Why not?
You want to be in
You're
it?
amazing.
Nah.
You, but
But democracy, like off the top of your head, like I know you've heard the
I
word
want to be in
before.
the channel.
Why not?
Because I don't want to.
Okay,
I'm
you're
sorry.
bashful. You don't want to be in it either?
No.
You should.
Yeah, like seriously. Sure? You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. 15 seconds.
Thanks.
We'll get an answer. For Neil, greatness began with a choice. The red pill or the blue pill. Now you can make that choice too, because now I'm introducing the red pill. The red pill contains the singular, powerful ingredient, L-theanine. If you choose to take the red pill, then click the screen right here to learn more. What's up guys, this is Red Pill Philosophy. Today I am joined by my friend Steven.
What's up?
And his homeboy Davis. And today we are going to have a little podcast, but I personally didn't want to just sit down and talk. I would have much rather kind of get up and make things a little spontaneous, maybe walk around, get participation, blah, blah, blah. So that's the dealio. So my friend here, Davis, was just referencing that in my videos, I'm a lot more energetic and excited than in person. What I was about to say was that there's definitely a difference between, you know, talking to another person and, you know, talking to yourself in your car while you're fucking, you know, screaming into a camera about an idea. There's kind of a difference. So I'm not gonna
seems the
scream
same
at you
way
guys.
too.
Yeah, when we met Elliot Hulse in person, he was very like chill.
Very laid back,
Yeah,
almost like unnerving.
Yeah.
This is very laid
I don't know
back.
if you know this,
very
but
chill.
I was actually at a seminar the day before. I had a conversation with him and his wife, and dude, I don't know, man. It's weird, like seeing how genuine people are in person. You're like, wow, these are exactly what I would imagine these people to be like.
Yeah.
It's so cool to just talk to and pick up their brain. It's really interesting. So.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. Some people, like, they see my videos, they see my channel, and they think, like, there's something special about me that they don't have, but that's, like, the very opposite of the message that Red Pill Philosophy is about, you know? It's about everyone can do what the fuck they want to do.
Sure.
We are just trained, we are trained to not believe in ourselves. We're trained to fear taking chances. We're trained, as we were talking about earlier. And anyways, let's fucking walk around. Sure. So
Yeah, man. I was talking to my buddy Julian Costa.
speak up a little bit.
I was talking to my buddy Julian Costa, and we were thinking about doing a podcast and stuff down in the Keys, and he was saying the same thing too. Most people, they think that they can't make a difference. They're too small. It's like having a fly in your room, though. Even though there's only one fly in your room, you're not gonna be able to go to sleep because of the buzzing, right? So no matter how small you are, it kind of works because your idea emanates to other people. It might emanate to you, might emanate to somebody else. Or like little antennas. So everyone really can make a difference, just by speaking up and being vocal. Making a YouTube channel, maybe, something. It doesn't take a whole lot.
I said this to Steven the other day. I said, he writes down things occasionally, like on your phone. I was checking some of the messages you write. Some of them are really funny, like comedy style, ranting about how the shitty traffic in Miami is.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And then there's other really insightful shit I see you write down. I'm like, why aren't you putting that in front of a camera?
Yeah.
Why aren't you showing that to people?
It's so much.
I should.
There's so much untapped potential out there.
Yeah.
It's fucking everywhere. And that's kind of what happened with me. Like, I've just had an urge to spew these ideas out for years now. And it just kind of made sense. Well, if I enjoy doing this, why don't I try to get out there as much as possible, and I can fucking make a living off doing it. That's also a plus. Like, people have this idea that we have to be totally altruistic and we can't do things with a self-interest. Yes, you can. You deserve some kind of compensation if you're going to put out quality work there for the world to see,
If your ideas have value, then people are going to want to hear your ideas and they're going to want to repay you for that.
Yeah.
So that's what our economy rewards a little bit to some people, other people not so much.
So let me ask you guys a question. So I've kind of done a few videos lately, kind of criticizing not so much the free market, but this idea of competition. I think competition, especially in the modern sense of the word, like when it comes to an economy, like the free market, a lot of times we support the idea of competition. We condone it. We say it's okay, it's good. It's good to compete. Competition is a good thing. But I wonder if competition is fundamentally, by definition and by default, what if competition is inherently divisive? Because when you really think about it, look at the terminology associated with it. And any person pursuing the American dream will say something like, I'm just trying to get ahead. Well, notice the terminology. To get ahead means to pursue your individual self-interest, let's go that way, essentially leaving others behind. And of course, the implication in that is kind of like, oh yeah, you're going to leave people behind, you're going to go ahead for yourself.
Sure.
What do you guys think about competition? Do you think it's inherently a divisive, kind of like screw other people over for my gain? What do you guys think?
I think that it's very predatory. If you don't get that job, someone else can get that job that's better than you.
Yeah.
Or if your business, wins, someone else's business is going to fail, or their sales are going to suffer. They're not going to, get as much food. They're not going to get as much money as you. So I think that competition is really, it's more of like a civilized kind of.
It's like natural selection for the free market.
Yeah, it's natural selection.
I call it survival of the fittest with a smile.
It's civilized, caveman, essentially.
Right,
We're
and
not
then
killing each other, but in a way, we still have that drive.
and so and then the question is, well, is competition, even if it means at the expense of others lesser than you, is that kind of a good thing? Is that maybe an inherent part of reality? Here, can you hold this for a while?
Sure.
My shoulder might melt. Oh, my fucking shoulder.
Boom.
Fucking weak. Okay, so what the fuck were we talking about?
We're talking about competition and how it relates to free market, and it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Is it an inherently good thing to have, this survival of the fittest? You're gonna have winners and losers. Is that fundamentally good? You're throwing altruism out the window, kind of. It's more of a self-interest kind of thing at the dismay of something
That's
else.
the question. Is competition inherent to this reality of ours? Is it inevitable, and is it a good thing? We tend to kind of feel like, oh, if somebody dies, it's so terrible, it's so sad. But every day,
Maybe he was weak.
maybe
he was an old
but
guy.
every day, the
sounds
same
sad,
person
but-
who's getting very all butthurt over a dead human will see a roach pass by and smash it into a fucking pancake across the floor. And we might say, oh yeah, but you know, humans are more deserving of respect than an insect.
Yeah.
But most people would agree that you shouldn't do that to cats or dogs. So where do you draw this line in terms of what life forms have value and which don't?
I'm a little bit of a nihilist. How do you pronounce it?
Nihilist,
Something like that. When it comes to that.
How's your shoulder?
Good, man. It doesn't. So far, so good.
No, I will say that. You might have stronger shoulders than me.
But that's not my 7D, so it's definitely a lot lighter.
Yeah, that's why I use it. I used to hold the 7D up. Fuck that.
Pain in the ass. But I think, you know, it's very subjective, which is a very interesting thing about our reality. I remember you did some videos on, you know, is there something you could hold on to? Like, is there some kind of physical force in the universe that holds together morality? Or is it all in our head?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we look at, say, you know, cows in the United States, you all like steak, you all like hamburgers. In India, that's like a crime, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like
cows
a
are holy.
person. But in Asia, a dog or a cat or whatever, you know, whatever country, a little stereotypical, but whatever, is food. Where here, it's like you kill a dog, or you kill a cat, you're like a psychopath. It's like, how dare you kill my dog? That's like a human being almost.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, you know, and this is where you start to get scary when you start thinking philosophically is, well, maybe there isn't any such thing as inherent value. Maybe none of us are worthy. Maybe none of us are special little snowflakes that God looks after, and that, you know, maybe we're all just biological life forms doing what we must do to survive. And maybe when somebody dies, it's not objectively a big deal. Like subjectively, we think it's a big deal because we're not human. We can put ourselves in their shoes. We start going down this road. It's just like, why don't you just kill ourselves? I mean, I'll just commit suicide and who cares?
Right, you know, and you look at like anarcho-capitalism or libertarianism or these other ideologies, and you think fundamentally,
Continuing
more
interactive journey.
this is fun. I kind of like that. You know, is anarcho-capitalism or libertarianism more moral than, say, statism, authoritarianism, communism? You know, I think it's all really subjective. But I think the only moral code we can really hold on to is how we feel. I think that's at the end of the day is, you know, what makes us individuals, how do we feel inside when something happens?
Just breathing out.
Okay. This is a part of our conditioning.
I'm multitasking. I'm trying to find out who to target.
I was like, oh, I'm being too loud, but
trying to find out who to like ask questions about their eating. I don't want to be obnoxious. Let's go that way.
But
This is random. Yeah, no, very good points.
no, I don't know, you know, because I think about that too. Like, this libertarianism or, you know, anarchism or whatever, somehow more moral. And I think it comes down to just the way that most societies, most people have intellectual inconsistencies. Like, you might say, oh, well, taxation is wrong because it's theft.
Right.
But then, you know, to a statist, taxation is okay, but if you try stealing something from that person, that's wrong. So, you know, I think that the most we can do is just kind of stamp out those intellectual inconsistencies with ideology that makes sense to us. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's really anything concrete in the universe that says this is the way things have to be, and if you're not, then you're an immoral person.
Let's go ask these people what they think about competition.
Sure. All right.
Comp and motherfucking, yo. Hey, can I get you guys' opinion on something? What do you guys think about competition? Think competition is a bad thing?
Depends.
Yeah, you think so? Why is that? I mean, there's things like free market competition, for example.
Yeah, like a lot of times competition gets improvement in general, like overall improvement.
Like innovation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But do you think, this is one thing that I thought about before, because you're definitely right that competition can spur innovation, but do you think that's the only way people can be motivated to innovate, or do you think maybe a desire to help other people can be a motivator for, let me make the cure for cancer now because I want to see people grow up or get better, as opposed to I just want to accumulate money for myself with a good invention?
I mean, a lot of times you could get, yeah,
Like a motivator.
right.
By force, what do you mean? Like internally force, like a motivation that prompts them to go forward? Or?
it's more like having a common goal. Like you all have each other's force to push to one specific goal.
Are you guys like Democrats, Republicans, or anything like that?
Good way to be.
That's good.
Open-minded people here.
Okay, guys. All right. Thanks a lot for your opinion.
All right,
Appreciate
take
it.
it easy.
Thank you, sir. Good job jumping in there and getting that angle. Here, take out the edge. All right, let's continue this journey.
I'm so used to walking on the outside. Like, whenever it's 3 people, it always gets a little complicated.
You claustrophobic or something? So, yeah. Well, I mean, that is the most common argument, it seems, in favor of competition that I hear is like, it motivates people to get shit done.
Yeah, sure.
But, and I've said this before, I think, although that is definitely true, I don't think it's the only way a person can be motivated to innovate. I don't think that at all.
Innovation
Why?
could simply be driven by the evolution of humanity. You know, where do we evolve to our next step? How do we,
Yeah.
you know, rank up in the evolutionary chain?
Yes, that's definitely another view. Like, because it seems like this is a complex one.
Yeah, what else, motivates human beings to do things besides just the desire to, make money or self-interest?
Seems that way. But see, what if that value that people have of, desiring money and wanting to get that little temporary false sense of superiority over others because you have more zeros in your bank account, or because you have more furniture and a bigger TV than your neighbor, or your lawn is greener than your fucking neighbor's lawn.
Keeping up with, what is it, the old
Kardashian?
saying, not the Kardashians. There's an old saying, like, I forget what it was, like keeping up with like the Johnsons or something. And the idea was like, you always have to have a bigger house, but like the Johnsons have this big house. So you have to have the furniture, the white picket fence, 2.5 kids, the dog,
Yes.
Go to this job
The classic vision of the American dream.
Exactly.
Fucking classic stereotypical vision.
Actually interesting because a while ago there was this bus driver. And for like 14 years, he went on the same route every day throughout the city.
Davis, would you do the honors?
Sure, man.
Let's see. Yeah, you got fucked.
All right. And so one day this bus driver,
More or less, you're not gonna be perfect.
he decides to go to like some other city, and he goes like a 3-hour trip, just completely, forgets his roots. He just goes on a trip instead of doing the same thing every day. And what happened to this guy is he kind of became like a hero for a lot of people. He was in the newspaper. He lost his job, but because of how popular what he did was, how it resonated with people, he got his job back.
Let's take a seat around.
The interesting thing about that, I think, is the fact that I think people have something in them that tells them that there's something more to just being like that bus driver. Right. They can relate to him. They can relate to him at a level that, look at this guy, he does the same thing every day, the same routes. And then he goes off and just becomes a complete rebel. He goes off to his other city on during work, just to go and travel. I think it brought up an emotional response to people like, I like that. I want to be like him. He was really popular. So I think that might say something about our society, that there's something in us and a lot of modern people that this regimented day-to-day life, maybe it overvalues certain things like self-interest, but not enough passion or whatever else, motivates people to do.
As I was saying before Davis got here, what's the alternative to that?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're here criticizing competition. Maybe competition is inherent. Maybe it leads to backstabbing and betrayals and all types of selfish behavior. But what would be the alternative? So I guess let's imagine for a moment what a world without competition would look like. What the fuck would that look like?
Wow.
Has it ever existed?
Competition.
I mean, I guess you could say it exists in pockets. Like if I go to Starbucks now and I buy a coffee, I didn't backstab anybody for a cup of coffee, though I did maybe backstab somebody for the money that I got. And when I say backstab, I don't literally mean like you backstab somebody, but this idea, for example, like if there's 2 workers trying to work for a company, right? Both workers are trying to become the best possible worker so they get hired and the other guy doesn't, right? In essence, him getting hired and the other guy not getting hired, although they weren't directly like killing each other like you might see like out in the wild, him in this competition to get to the money, he outdid the other guy. Maybe the other guy might not get the job. Maybe he might be unemployed. Maybe he might get a job that pays less. So, although that's not like backstabbing in a literal sense, it's still competitive and it's still kind of like, I'm getting ahead, I'm kind of leaving you behind. So in that sense, buying your money, buying fucking coffee at Starbucks, you may have gotten the money from a job you got at where you had to outdo the other guy. You don't give a fuck about the other guy. Like if you go to an interview, a job, and you got the job, you don't go home crying because the other people didn't get the fucking job. Like, you don't do that.
I think what ends up happening in a free market, at least theoretically, right, is that when someone doesn't get that job, that means that position in society is already filled. We have enough people working this position. You're not going to supply any extra value in this department. You're going to have to find something else. So it kind of forces that person to say, okay, well, if I can't work at Starbucks, maybe I'll make YouTube videos. Starts making YouTube videos. And that section of society is now filled with more value thanks to that person.
That's that market allocation theory or something like that.
Something like that.
Where if you're not doing this, you'll just serve another purpose somewhere else in the economy.
Sure.
I've heard that before. That's like a common free market like argument for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that's kind of like.
If I may, I'd like to interject another thought.
Go for it.
Is competition a natural human instinct to, is it within our blood to be competitive? Because, I mean, when you look at it holistically, when have you ever seen, when has humanity ever existed without any kind of competition?
Fucking no.
Impossible. I think in our hearts, with what we know so far, the competitive market or competition in general has always been a huge part of our existence, and it's really interesting trying to think of what the hell a world without competition would look like. Even right now I'm still trying to imagine what that'd be.
Well, I guess the question is this what we're doing right here a good example of a world without competition, at least as a microcosm?
Yeah.
But I guess
What else are we doing too? We uploading a video on YouTube?
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like it's tainted everywhere, and it almost seems impossible. And I think I just uploaded a video this morning. Peace isn't possible. I talk about how fucking hard it is to not get into an argument with other people. Like especially in Miami, you can't switch lanes without getting into a fucking fight with somebody, right? It's almost impossible. And and the argument that I put forth is that maybe it's not your responsibility or my responsibility, or maybe it's not anybody's responsibility. This is so awesome and random, dude. Maybe it's not my responsibility or responsibility as individuals to worry about caring for other people. Sure. Maybe it's simply your responsibility to preserve your self-interest, my self-interest. Because the point I made in the video this morning is that if you're driving down the street, is it your responsibility to be 100% vigilant of a cat that might cross the street and you run it over? Or is it the cat's responsibility to evolve to such a level where they think enough and they care enough about their self-interest and not do something as fucking silly as jumping into a fucking street? Where do you draw this line? And I think it's just a lot. I just think it's not the role of the individual.
Species. Like, is it our job to preserve a species of animal that doesn't really serve any purpose to humans? Is it within our DNA to actually have to preserve that species for any reason? Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's more of an aesthetic thing. I think it's more of like, I appreciate this animal's existence. I might appreciate what it can do. Maybe it has some kind of value in it, but I don't think human beings really have to go as far as actually having to conserve other species and their well-being. It's just not something that's inherent. Yeah. Another thing you were saying was, do we have to care about the guy in the other lane? Do we have to be vigilant of other people? I made a post a while ago on Facebook, I remember, of commenting on that plane that went missing, and how CNN was on it for like a month. And I would go into work every day and I would see the same thing, the news, we might have found a piece of the plane in the Atlantic, a wing, or it just turned out to be some debris. Fucking serious. And I was like, you know what, I don't give a shit about any of these people, man. Like, I don't. Like, it may sound bad on the surface, but, I feel like it's like a fraternity, like the whole world, like we're somehow in this all together. Yeah. like we're all in this forced fraternity with each other. Like, you need to care about this person, or he's an American, you're an American, you need to like each other. But he's he's from Afghanistan. You're not supposed to like him because he's a terrorist.
What do you think the average person watching CNN and keeping up with the latest Malaysian, missing flight? Do you think they care about the passenger?
Oh, hell no.
The news is their popcorn. It's their oh shit, breaking news. What the fuck's going on?
Dude,
That's what I kind of alluded to in the post I made. I was like, people that are like that, they're just vicariously living through the media, basically getting turned on by the fact that people are suffering.
Yeah.
I went home for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
My parents only watch news on TV. And I've been trying to ease them into, hey, libertarian ideology, okay? Fuck the bullshit. Fuck
What are
this.
they now? What's their political?
They still consider themselves conservative Republicans, but they have been. I've had a huge history with my parents, and they've lived in the face of tyranny. They lived in Albania for most of their lives. They're born in Tehran, lived in the capital, know what poverty is like, and it's kind of strange to see them, cling to the ideologies of the Republican Party. And everything that goes along with that. I see them rooting for McCain, and I'm like, war.
It is interesting because it happens so often. So often people from communist dictatorships overseas come to America,
Especially
and
here in Miami.
and they think that by default, because this is the land of the free, the home of the brave, the red, white, and blue, and all these, romanticized historical concepts that are becoming more and more outdated as this country becomes more of a fucking empire. They think that they're made. They think that the moment they come here, they're perfectly immunized from tyranny because this must be a free place, right?
Yeah.
Shockingly, what if this place has now become its own fucking big government empire?
Yeah. It's become the antagonist. It's become the antithesis of what America is made out to be.
I think people are in
Which is kinda
denial.
hilarious.
I think people really are in denial because the people who came here hoping to, live the American dream, attain the freedom, attain the, potential to be able to make themselves in what they want, is lost. That's degraded over time, and now they realize that, hey, the system's fucking us up the ass.
Yes. It's anally raping us all.
It didn't exactly keep where it was going, ever since everything.
Yeah, and that really brings in an interesting point, about the cycle of civilizations. The similarities between the United States today and the Roman Empire before its collapse, startling to say the least.
I believe they started out as a democracy too. A republic, then a democracy, I think, somewhere along the line, right? And then the government entertained the people over a long time.
Oh yeah, now we're an oligarchy is what we're defined as right now.
Yeah, they just did a study. I think it was at Johns Hopkins, some university. Actually, I'll have to look it up. I'm sure a quick Google search can pull it up. But yeah, they say, well, not surprisingly, that the U.S. government is considered an oligarchy because they did a study, I think, from 1996 to 2002, where they looked at all of the legislation, and they decided that, well, none of this reflects what the people want, and it's all kind of in the interest of the elite, of the people in power.
Right.
But even then, I wouldn't want to live in a democracy either, because that's just rule of the 51% over
Yes.
the 49%.
Yeah, I was
so
having
both systems are equally.
I was debating somebody in the YouTube comment section the other day over democracy. It was a video I did where I interviewed voters at gunpoint with a toy gun. And they're like, that guy holding the orange toy gun's an asshole. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's like, of course I support taxation. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, do you have a choice in paying for those? Like, oh, this is democracy. This is democracy. Democracy is just majority rule, right? It's 51% dominating 49. And he's like, that's not what democracy is. You need to go back to school and learn your definitions.
That'd be an interesting thing to
I'm like, that is what
ask somebody too.
Well, what is democracy? What is democracy?
Is democracy?
Hey, could I ask you a question real quick? What's democracy? You know the definition of democracy? It's like a little pop quiz. I just want to ask you. We're doing a little video here.
Okay.
You know what democracy is?
Not really.
Do you speak English?
A little bit.
You ever heard the word democracy?
Democracy?
Democracy.
The politics?
Yeah, the politics one, democracy. Do you know what that is? Do you know a definition of it?
The party or...
Not the Democrats, but no democracy. That's okay. No, that's fine.
Sorry.
Let me keep that joke to myself. I was gonna say. Hey, dude. Could I ask you a question, man? We're doing a little video here. Do you know what can you define for me democracy?
What is democracy? I don't know the word.
Oh my god. It's okay, man. It's alright, bro. I gotta stop asking Asian people.
Actually, yeah.
That people don't know what democracy is, or that people don't speak English. Because that did happen earlier, actually, in the red pill blue pill prank thing. Praise Jesus. All right, we have to confirm that people are still alive. Let's ask. Father.
Maybe we can do a little competition.
She's on the phone. who can get somebody to define democracy
more
first?
people, more of them say yes, then we have to do something, and more of them say no.
Could I ask you guys a quick question? We're doing a little video here. Do you know the definition of democracy? More or less, it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry, this isn't one of those.
What is this for?
It's from our YouTube channel.
Do I have to be in it? I kind of don't want to.
Why not?
You want to be in
You're
it?
amazing.
Nah.
Cute, but
But democracy, like off the top of your head, like I know you've
I
heard
don't
the
want
word
to be in
before.
the channel.
Why not?
Because I don't want to.
Okay,
I'm
you're
sorry.
bashful. You don't want to be in it either?
No.
You should.
Yeah, like seriously. Sure? You sure?
Yeah, man.
Okay. 15 seconds.
Thanks.
We'll get an answer.
But yeah, man, just to think that, people think of America as the land of the free, that democracy is the best system. But it never intellectually clicked that you're still a slave if you're not the majority. So if you think pot should be legal, you're a fucking slave because you're the minority.
Well, that's what I've said before. Freedom isn't possible without cooperation. Why is there no freedom in a democracy? Because people won't cooperate. They're willing to backstab each other, to steal their neighbor's wealth at the point of a government gun, via taxation. These guys gotta know. Guys, do you mind if I ask you guys a quick question? We're doing a video here. Do you know the definition of democracy?
Democracy. Okay, that would
Doesn't have to be perfect.
yeah, does not be book like
Doesn't have to be perfect textbook definition, just more or less.
okay, basically where the individuals represent themselves through voting. That's how I would say.
Any other variations of democracy?
Variations.
Well, like, do you have a separate definition of your own? Do you agree with that one?
Actually, yeah,
I think that's pretty much the most fundamental part of it.
just moving away from democracy.
How about the idea of majority rule? That is also a component of democracy, correct?
That's what I'm saying, that it's represented by what the people vote. So majority vote one way, and that's the way it is.
Yes. So, I guess, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that system is a good system, or do you think it has its flaws?
Majority rule.
Yeah, pretty much majority rule. That's the real key point we're talking about here. The idea that the majority can impose their will on the majority. What do you guys think about that element?
I think it's a good law. There's things that come into place, like where they're they have certain rights, like for example, civil rights. And most of the majority were white people, and they believe they were slaves and things like that. So then it all depends on the circumstance of what you're talking about.
Yes. I feel as of right now, that is one of the best ways to approach problems. But there are going to be problems that do arise where, for example, everyone at one point thought the Earth was flat, and the majority thought that was the majority. Both through scientific knowledge, that the Earth is round. And at that time, there was a minority, and people were being killed for anyone who believed otherwise.
So it's like tyranny of the majority.
But I feel the truth is always revealed over time. So eventually, the majority will have to succumb.
Some people might just have to get killed for a few decades,
Yeah,
but eventually,
unfortunately.
people will wake up.
Over time, our morality gets better. So the consequences of the minority losing their votes are becoming less and less worse. We're not dealing with civil rights now. We're not dealing with killing off people for believing a certain thing. So it can over time, majority rule will get better and better.
Right. Stephen, what are your thoughts? Because I know that you were the one giving pretty good criticisms of it earlier.
Yeah, I definitely think that democracy, in essence, is the majority taking control of the minority. I don't think it's a perfect consequences by any means. Have you guys ever considered what the government or society would be like without a democracy, or even maybe without a government? Have you ever
like an anarchic
like
government?
an anarchic?
I don't think it would be well at all. I mean, let's say a lot of the very first civilizations had a very not very well molded governments, and killing happened a lot more often. Not in comparison to the amount of people. I mean, we have a lot more people, so things do happen.
See, but here's the thing. Here's the interesting point, though. Like, you're thinking of an anarchic society in today's world, full of violent psychopaths. And
psychopaths is kind of something that's always existed in the human
exactly,
nature.
no, and right, and so, but what I'm saying is, a lot of times people view anarchy as like, oh, we're just going to replace our current
right now.
And I think anarchy is more an effect than a cause. You don't put anarchy in to create a better world. Anarchy would naturally arise in a better world, where people learn to cooperate, where you don't need government institutions to impose laws and taxations and regulations and stuff. It would naturally arise in a world where people learn how to cooperate, you know? So I think that's just a key point to make about anarchy. It's not like we're going to go into the government and then we're going to like put an anarchist banner over the White House, you know? It's a gradual shift that must happen internally within each person, and collectively the consciousness of people and society improves to such a state where you don't need government powers, you don't need authoritarian mandates, you just have people know to fucking cooperate and work together and not backstab each other and be douchebags.
That's true, but I feel as let's think about how society was before our modern government has been established. Before the Europeans came to America, you had a lot of the Native Americans, and with their little form of government, but they were little nations of groups of people, and they would get into lots of fights with other little groups. Now, when you have a bigger government, more well-established government, less anarchic or anarchaic or whatever, or whatever word you would use, they were able to progress a lot more in society. A lot of societies that are more governed progress a lot faster than those that are anarchaic or anarchic, whatever.
Well, would you say that the violence issue, like with Native Americans, for example, combating these other tribes, would you say that violence component is gone in a world with governments, or it still exists in a different form?
It still exists because of the change, because of the way people view things. There's always going to be opposing views. But I'm saying, as with the government, you can establish more, and you can progress as a whole a lot further.
So maybe government is one effective mechanism for trying to improve society and progress things. Do you think if there was a way to convince everyone to become more cooperative, less backstabbing, and learn to internally desire to work together, do you think if we can actually convince everyone to do that? I know this might sound a little bit hypothetical and idealistic, but just for the sake of theory, do you think in that world where people voluntarily cooperate and everybody, you know, people have moral standards, they don't want to fucking backstab each other, do you think that might be a more effective way to progress than a world with government?
I think that would be awesome. I just don't think it's probable.
Right, and that's the thing with most people who reject anarchy. It's too idealistic. It's like, oh yeah, world without government where everybody works together? Yeah, that'd be nice, but is it fucking gonna happen? I think most people would like to live in a world without government, but it's gonna take a consciousness change in individuals. That's the thing. Anarchy is not a functional philosophy, it's an idealistic philosophy. It's about what would happen if people changed internally and became better.
But do you think people are born with the certain consciousness, or do you think people learn through?
Probably it could be a mix of both, possibly maybe genetic as well as environmental.
So if it is, like, let's say it is an anarchist society, and then some child is born with their own mental model that we're gonna go for the sake of killing again, that they think killing is right, but everyone else agrees that it's wrong. You know, everyone is on that same level of consciousness where everyone thinks that killing is wrong. That one person, if consciousness isn't fully something that you were to teach someone, they're born with that idea, then anarchy is gonna fall apart again, because now you're gonna have someone who's gonna be killing.
I think that,
and that means that there's gonna be other people who are gonna be born with that exact same problem.
Let's say you have psychopaths in society, an anarchist society. Let's say in a free society, if you want to, you can own a gun. If that guy tried to come into my house or break into my house or steal my car, try to shoot me or try to shoot somebody else, I would hope that, you know, whoever's around would try to take that person out before he took me out, you know?
So you need some sort of power to enforce, something there to enforce a defense.
You could have a police force. I think that in an anarchist society, you could have a police force. Like for instance, let's say right now we're in an anarchist society. There's just 5 of us, and I own a house, and I'm leaving to go to another, you know, place, and I want to hire someone to protect my house. So I hired Chris here to stand on my house with a gun and protect my house in case invaders come in. I think purely the only way an anarchist society can work is if there's some fundamental ideas that are structured within a society. Like for instance, a lot of anarchists think of like the non-aggression principle. So say we have anarchy, but then we have private property. So I can own this land, I own this, you know, pile of cement, but
You didn't enforce it, is what I'm trying to get. The government, that's the whole point. The government was invented just to enforce those ideas.
Well, here's the question, because, and I think this is what Stephen was going to get to, is that could you have a voluntary? That's the real distinction in an anarchist world. That everything is, you know, you're voluntary. You're not forced to do things against your will. Could you have a police force in a governmental society? The police force is not necessarily voluntary in every sense of the word. Like if you don't support the cops, your taxes are still going to be used to fund them. Could we have a voluntary police organization where people hire? I guess you could say private, but that usually has a lot of that negative kind of connotation. People think, oh, profit-driven, they're going to become like Blackwater mercenaries and shit.
But I could say too, is Blackwater mercenaries, is that a bad thing? To have them around, right?
Well, a lot of them have killed innocent people. I've seen footage of where they've actually bombed little kids innocently.
And I have too.
But I've also heard it argued that they're not really that private.
Right.
Like, aren't they executing governmental military operations?
And here's the thing.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I already had like this line of thought, but I think we're on the same page.
We're trying to get the same ideas.
Is that, you know, you look at a company like Blackwater, and let's say, could we use Blackwater? Could we tame this rabid fucking dog? And instead of, you know, attacking people in the Middle East and killing people, what if there was a set of rules? Now, a lot of anarchists like to think, well, what if we live in a society that had certain rules? You can't kill people, and only if in self-defense. You own private property, and you can't commit fraud. Now, if you have only those rules, let's say we have this thing with the Nigerian girls that got kidnapped. A lot of people want the U.S. government to go in and get those girls back. I think that's wrong, but I think what if those same people got some guns or got some money, hired Blackwater, go over to Nigeria and get those girls back? If they kill any civilians, they're civilians themselves. So if they kill those people, then they're going to be charged as murderers, right? But they'll be able to get those girls back by killing the kidnappers, who were the Boko Haram. So I think that if you look at it that way, maybe you can use privatization, private contractors in a way that's beneficial to society instead of having government. Because right now we have government, and these Blackwater people are killing people. I think it's like every 50 cents of the dollar goes to private contractors now, the war on terror. So if you were to have an anarchist society, it creates accountability. So let's say, for instance, that, you know, Goldman Sachs or some big banks, they fail and you lose your money, right? Well, maybe you had a contract with them saying that, hey, you know, you weren't supposed to have your reserve system. Or, for instance, at the very least, let's say I don't use Goldman Sachs or whatever, I don't use Wells Fargo as my bank. Wells Fargo fails. The government comes up to me with a gun and says, you need to pay Wells Fargo back because that's the law. So I have to give Wells Fargo my money in a bailout. Otherwise, the government will, you know, if I don't pay my taxes, they're going to take me to jail. In a free society and an anarchist society, they can't do that. So although you have these concerns of, well, what if Blackwater starts killing people? Well, they're held accountable, right? Because nowadays the government's, you know, letting these things happen, and there's no accountability. So I think maybe if you look at it from a different perspective, you might see that, like, you know, private services can be used in a way that's not destructive.
It's the idea of force. I feel like at the beginning we had to assume that people have to follow these certain laws, but these certain guidelines or laws are going to have to be enforced, because let's think about the beginning of early America. I mean, the monopolists, those people were, it was at that time there was no governmental law of owning of certain companies or owning all of the oil or all of the steel, all of the railroad production. And with that, without those laws in place, you had these people who controlled entire companies, entire factories, and
they control the
resources. And then, so then now you have this giant disparity between the very few rich who own America, who run everything, and tons of people who are dirt poor and are being forced to work in those mills with being paid at whatever wage they want. And then now the government had to come in with those laws to stop those people from being able to do that.
Well, let me ask you something. Here in Florida, we pay our bills to Florida Power at night, right?
Yeah.
They have a monopoly on power.
They have kind of. They don't have enough power of all of America though. It's only in Florida.
Right. Now, things like that, it's a government granted monopoly. It's a government granted thing. Now, I would argue that real monopoly is like, let's say that, you know, you look at like businesses in a free market without government intervention, like FPL or any other company. And I think where I was going with that is that really, like, for American steel and oil companies, they don't really hold monopolies on resources. There's many different companies. You know, the people that own the oil are often private people, residents, citizens, communities that sell their oil off to these companies. Those companies get a lot of special breaks by government. They get a lot of special permissions by government. And a matter of fact, in order to do business on that level today, you have to use government in some way to keep you above the competition, otherwise you are going to fail. So I think the concerns you're having, a lot of times people say, well, look at all these bad things that are happening. We need a government to come in and fix them. The truth is that a lot of these things, if you really look into them, were started by government or continue today as we speak because of government.
It's almost a worse idea to centralize a lot of what's happening right now, because it's not been very effective. The government hasn't been very effective with a lot of things they've been doing, especially with like turning. I mean, I could take USPS for example. I've had a lot of personal fucking issues with USPS.
Oh, yeah.
You know, losing a package or you know, taking one day to travel a 30-minute car ride. But that's just beside the point. It's just that, you know, from my experience, it almost seems like, you know, if you gave things like the private sector or the free market, the way that things work in that sense, you know, you'd probably be able to get a better end result than what you would do with having a centralized government in the scale that we do today.
The thing is, the consequence of a fully capitalistic society is going to be monopolies. Is going to be those monopolies.
Well, how do monopolies happen?
Precisely that, where there's no government in certain in regards
where do
to
they
Not
get their
necessarily
powers to
though.
be able to
It's
start
not
monopolies?
inevitable. I don't think it's inevitable
I think
that
it is,
without
'cause
government.
it's kind of what happened. That's literally what happened when in the early America. Those
Well, it may have
monopolies-
happened once, but do you think it would happen in every instance? Like, isn't it possible that if there's one giant company trying to hoard all the wealth, resources, and money in a certain industry, there might be another businessman who's a competitor who helps kind of deviate some of it? Isn't it possible that there would be a competitor that kind of at least gives people an alternative to the monopoly and basically turns it into not a monopoly because there's actually a competitor?
I mean, that would be
It's a
that would be
it's a
great.
possibility,
That would be great
right?
if that,
But most
if that has occurred, but it hasn't
likely,
occurred
if
yet.
someone comes up, let's say there's the first person who's starting a business, and then someone else realizes, oh, you're doing very good, I want to start this business too. It's most likely going to happen is that person's going to buy off that person's company, so he doesn't have competition. And like without the government in place, the person's going to have the free will to just buy out that company and every other company that starts blooming up out of the ground.
That's the thing with the anarchic ideology, is that there's so many hypotheticals because it's almost impossible to look back historically when the last time we had a truly anarchic society. And a lot of people are anarchists. When you go to Starbucks and buy a coffee, wasn't that anarchic? That's within a government. So, like yourself would say, would just dwindle into a fucking monopolistic empire.
Without government,
There's
wouldn't be able to happen. But in this time and age, I don't think as a collective, the humans are ready to do that.
Right. And what do you think is holding them back? Like just the quality of consciousness, like the quality of people?
Just the difference in culture around all over the world. Everyone has
there's,
totally different views of what's right, what's wrong, what you can do, what you can't do.
And what about when there's certain disagreements that happen between two people? You know, for example, property. You come and you take this property, and the other person's like, wait, I've had this property for years and years and years, passed down by family. How do you decide who gets the property? And then there's a judiciary system that has to come to place.
All disputes.
And then like if you just have a judiciary system, then that can be wrong too. You gotta have, you know,
Yeah, I've said
all
before
different
that
branches.
the world we live in right now with government is all a reflection of the quality of the people. if we have government, it's because that's the best we could fucking do right now. And so I guess the whole anarchic idea, at least the way I interpret it, is that if people improve to such a level of cooperation and not being backstabbing psycho fucks, anarchy may be possible as an effect of the quality of people being sufficient enough.
I think
I think it definitely will be possible. It's just that I feel like the whole backstabbing idea is just, it's too. I think it's too good to be true.
But do you think that the paradigm of government kind of keeps our minds closed? Like, if anarchy is the ideal, if it is a possibility, shouldn't more people be talking about it? Shouldn't it be like the rainbow at the end of the road that we should be aspiring to?
The government definitely suppresses a lot of ideas, and that's what I like about capitalism, because you have these private industries who pay people to be different.
Yes.
You pay them way more.
A lot more diversity.
Or just for example, working at Google, the whole idea of their approach to working isn't so systematic.
Authoritarian.
They get to do with whatever they want, you know. And obviously, they have to do some sort of work, but their schedule's a lot more open and flexible than pretty much almost any company out there.
I think what's more realistic is trying to improve the government rather than trying to improve the way of life. Trying to improve step by step, like what we have right now. Right now, we do have a democracy, and it's not the perfect democracy, so we can do our best to try and improve democracy we have now. That's a lot more realistic than trying to, take away and completely changing, the way of living we have now.
What about planting seeds of anarchy in people, telling them, look, we can live in a better world if we change internally? Because maybe what government is a lot of times, it's the external solution. We're going to use an external entity that is going to force people to be good, force people to be charitable with welfare, force people to be good, soldiers who go kill innocent brown kids overseas for the oil, but not really for the oil, for freedom, right? Yeah. So it seems like my only issue with the government solution is that it's an external solution. It's trying to find solutions outside of us. Like, oh, look, I'm a crappy person, my neighbors are crappy people. Hopefully these politicians in Washington, D.C., who are supposed to not be crappy people.
That's another problem. A lot of the politicians are also not really very educated. I mean, to make rational decisions, or at least if you're going to be making decisions of the entire country, you need to be very mathematically inclined and very scientifically inclined. And a lot of representatives are neither.
They're very dumb.
George Carlin alluded to this a little bit, and towards the end of this comedy, he kind of sounded a little bit more like a humanitarian. I love the man to death. Really disappointed when he died. George Carlin, yeah, great comedian. But when he was talking about, he was saying, everybody's complaining about, the politicians, but where do politicians come from? They don't come from some, other dimension and phase into ours, and then all of a sudden they're politicians. They come from American homes, American parents, American people, American education systems, and what we have. And this is as good as it gets. And he said, if this is what we can produce, this is as good as it gets. Garbage in, garbage out. So, in a way, it really does start with the mentality of the people and the ideologies and understanding, how do we figure out where to, draw the line or label things in a way, in a sense. So, interesting.
Yeah, and what you said about the externalities of kind of government coming in to shape things a certain way, I think that could be achieved in a private, voluntary system, keyword voluntary. The interesting thing is, how does that come to be? And I've had a lot of time thinking about that. And one way I've kind of thought about it is if you lived in kind of an anarchist society, that kind of lays the groundwork for, because government is a monopoly of itself. You have government, there's only one government in the United States, right? So you don't get to choose what government you get to pay your taxes to. There's just this one government. So say that anarchism isn't ideal. Let's say, okay, maybe we can't completely have an anarchist society. But when you're born, do you sign your name on the Constitution? Do you choose to pay taxes? Do you sign yourself up to the IRS? If you get a gym membership, you can't, you sign your name at the bottom line. They're not just going to start charging you every month for their services. You get a free, you get a gym membership, but the government gets to go in and say, hey, you have to start paying taxes because you need to pay for this school, or you need to pay for that, or you need to pay for that, even though you never signed up to use that service. So how come LA Fitness can't send me a bill every month and, claim to take me to court if I don't pay their membership fees, but government can do that? Now I think if you look at it another way, and
you're saying, I can sign up for LA Fitness, go to the gym, and then not pay, and I can dispute them, because I don't think that's what it's
No, that's not what I'm saying. what I'm saying is,
Can LA send you?
why can't
a
LA
bill?
Why can't they force you to pay for a
Right,
service
right.
you don't want?
why can't I start a gym and
For
I send you a
example.
bill in the mail and say, hey, the gym, you can go in the gym anytime you
That
want,
could
but
actually
you have to pay
happen
the bill.
with anarchy because there's no one to keep them from doing that.
It's
So
up to the people, and that's a big responsibility toward the people. But one thing I want to say too.
We have to hope that people aren't selfish.
Exactly.
But one thing I
yeah,
want to
because
say
they
too.
can pay someone else to
It-
come and enforce
but
it.
here's
like
the
with a
thing.
gun.
In an
But
anarchist
isn't that
society,
government?
how long is it before an asshole decides he wants to take over shit and become
Right,
a douchebag? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So when you look at like government,
Douchebag keyword.
at the very foremost fundamental level, you could say it's taxation of theft. Is it wrong that they can come in and charge you for services that are may or may not have ever applied for? Now, one solution that I've heard of and kind of came up with is that what if instead of having one federal government, the United States government, the Florida government, the state of Florida, you have governments in competition with one another. Kind of like if you moved into a society of homeowners. They had certain rules and regulations that if you bought a house there, you had to sign a contract. What if you say a bunch of people got their money together, say all of us, we bought a bunch of land somewhere, and we said this is the way things are going to run. We bought some houses, maybe some apartments. People moved into those apartments, they signed a piece of paper. You have to pay 10% of what you make while you live in this area or wherever, and you have to pay to this government. In return, we'll provide you with a police service, we'll provide you with a court service that you provide, that you have to abide by, and we can throw you in jail, etc., etc. You sign your name on that contract, it's all good. If you want to leave that government, it's all good. You can leave that government, go to a different place, maybe somewhere else. Like maybe if you're a socialist, if you like socialism, you can move into a socialist government where you sign a contract. All right, cool, you're a socialist now. But I think the fundamental immorality and where a lot of anarchists come from is it okay? Not necessarily trying to make you live in an anarchist society where there is no government, but at the very least, I'm more of a voluntarist where I believe everything should be voluntary. All interactions should be voluntary. So what gives government the authority to come in and give me a bill when LA Fitness can't come in and give me a bill?
And mind you, a bill for shit you may not support, like warfare or bailing out and make rich banks and stuff like that. I mean, is that really representing the people when the government comes in and takes our tax dollars to bail out the banks? I mean, you could argue, yeah, well, the society would have fucking collapsed if there wasn't a bank bailout. Well, the fact is, banks know they're going to get bailed out. They make shitty choices, creates the moral hazard that says, hey, it's a fucking free-for-all. Let's make all the bad choices we want. The taxpayers will pay us out. All the time we got now guns called cops to force people to give up their taxes to bail out the maker rich. So I think that's what Stephen was alluding to, is that the voluntary idea, the idea that you give people a choice, you don't force people to do things. If you can't force anyone to do things against their will, how can anyone really be harmed? There's a couple variations in there, but
Yeah,
I just feel like if everything was voluntary, I feel like there's some things people aren't going to be wanting to do. Someone would be like, well, if I can still survive with not working, not doing anything, I'm just going to do that because it's a lot easier.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure you're going to have a lot more people like doing that, decide not to do anything and just getting paid to survive.
Yeah, I'll definitely do
well,
that.
how would they get paid if they're not doing it? How would they get paid if they're not doing it?
Well, I mean, the whole point is that saying that everything's voluntary, so there's money to volunteer. Like there's a lot of loopholes. Bitcoin, yeah.
I mean, that could be a money system that people voluntarily adopt. Like, for instance, your US dollars apply, it's legal tender.
I think I believe accepted before that. So like people would give the money power. The moment everyone's like, I don't want the dollar,
But what if I told you
the dollar
that
value
you
will
gave a
collapse.
dollar bill?
The government gave the dollar bill power? I think it's totally up to the people to decide that. If no one wants to use the dollar bill, then
But do you know that the Federal Reserve is
Privately.
basically a part
Have you
private
heard of
entity?
legal tender law? It essentially says that if you operate a business in the United States, you have to accept the US dollar.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's actually a criminal felony.
That's true.
That's force.
That's
There's no
force.
voluntarism
There's no
there.
voluntarism. The dollar has lost 98% of its value since 1913.
When the Federal Reserve was established, by the way.
If you held a dollar in 1913, you have 2 cents today. That means you have to work twice as much. You have to work so much harder to make that same dollar bill.
yeah.
Of course, prices adjust here and there, but you still have inflation and your savings goes down. So if I voluntarily wanted to use, let's say, Bitcoin instead of US dollar, I can do that as long as the government lets me. But now they have legislation saying that if I use Bitcoins, I have to pay capital gains tax now, and that's going to be a charge.
That's mainly because the dollar bill is like what why America's so, why the American government is so like, I guess scared of giving up that power of having the currency that everything's backed off of. I'm totally for Bitcoin or some sort of cryptocurrency because it'll make everything a lot easier, you know, instead of having to go to China and then convert my money to their currency and then to pay for everything there, I can just use one currency to just pay for everything. And I'm totally in favor of that. Now, the whole idea is that I feel like being able to change to go from dollar bill to a cryptocurrency isn't gonna be something that's just gonna happen because the American government is not gonna want to give up the dollar bill as being the center stage.
And it doesn't have to
power.
happen. We just got to give people the voluntary choice to adopt it if they see fit.
Maybe it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. You know, I'm not forcing Bitcoin on you. Maybe Bitcoin's not the answer. It could be
any other cryptocurrency. I think certain other ones are a little bit more that have a lot of better security than Bitcoin.
I support ultra quantum stuff. But the fundamental of that argument is too, even, you know, maybe I want to use seashells as my currency, right? I still think that the government shouldn't have anything to do with my trade of seashells. If I want to trade seashells with you, I shouldn't be taxed unless I voluntarily said I could be taxed. I think that's kind of fundamentally, it's not that you have to agree with me or I have to agree with you. It's
Don't force me.
don't force me to do it. It's kind of like, at the end of the day, we're all fundamentally different. We're all fundamentally different individuals. And to accept that fact, to not use force, is everything can be voluntary or under contract. I think that's kind of the ultimate goal of anarchism, really. I mean, heck, you could have a federal government and all that stuff, as long as if you had like an anarchist living in his house and no one bothered him, no one taxed him or anything, that's technically anarchy.
Yeah.
So if you go based off that level of anarchy, it's a voluntary interaction
Voluntarism.
between human beings. I think that's kind of the fundamental.
I just don't understand like how certain public things like, you know, like public libraries, public schools,
The roads.
like
A
how
public
all that
park?
how
a
that's
private park?
a private park.
Private park.
They're a lot more nice. They're a lot nicer. But the thing is that how often are people going to be willing to give their money? A lot of the stuff that we build is in private. A lot of the things that we use is public.
I have to ask you, how much of your money do you pay in taxes?
Me personally, well, I mean, I don't really work, so.
Well, you know, if you did, you might pay, let's say, 30 to 50% in taxes. What if instead of paying that taxes to the government, and mind you, you know, when you get services back, not all of it goes to you. A lot of it goes to the third person. A lot of it goes to the government, to bureaucrats, to politicians, to campaigns. That money gets lost in the system. They buy B-2 bombers for $1 billion.
Yeah.
They buy, you know, all kinds of stupid stuff with your money.
That's to do with
So
power
much
and trying
wealth.
to still being
I'd rather
like the
choose
number
when
one, the
that
powerful
money
country.
Now, wouldn't you rather your money go to the private parks that you enjoy, not the public parks that aren't kept well?
What happens when a president you don't support gets elected and he starts enacting a bunch of policies you don't support?
Right.
It's like, fuck, now I gotta sit here for 4 years, get taxed and be subject to laws and shit I don't
Like,
support?
I don't support, you know, brown people in the Middle East getting drone bombed. I'd rather spend my money on a new iPhone, you know, support that business. I don't know, it could be anything more peaceful than that. You know, I'd rather put my money to charity. I'd rather give my money to.
But you could do that. No one's stopping you from doing
You
that.
I
can,
can't.
but the point is still being forced to pay for shit he doesn't
Still got the
support.
tax.
And I have a lot less money than the government.
But I just feel like those taxes, like, they help build and sustain what we have. Like, it helps us.
There's no
expand.
denying that the government has done some good with what it's spent, but the question is, could it have been done voluntarily without all the negative effects of being forced to pay for crap you don't support?
There hasn't really been any other society that's proven that.
And I guess that's the reason we're here. Plant seeds, and hey, at least people know that there may be something better than what we have. And I think that if everybody
I think there is.
aspired to it, how long would it really take to change things? We live in a current paradigm of government. We're so used to it. It's the norm. We don't know. We've been told our whole lives you can't live without government, right? We think when we hear the word anarchy, we think people throwing bricks through buildings and blowing shit up. When really our definition of anarchy is simply voluntarism. What could be peaceful?
Society's constantly changing, so we'll see what
That's how I feel. I feel like our society has gotten a lot better than it used to be, and I feel it's going to continue that path.
Yeah.
Like the evolution of humankind, I believe is going to be for the better. Eventually, we might be able to get to that stage where everything can be voluntary because people have a good sense of morals, a good sense of self-awareness, and what's right and what's wrong.
I just think we always have to at least
Keep in mind.
keep aspiring towards that and not get stuck in the paradigm of statism, I
Yeah.
think. Guys, very good conversation. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Good talking to you guys.
Check out the YouTube channel. Video will be up in a couple days.
The conversation.
All right, check it out.
Guys, take care. That was awesome.
Makes it too late for class.
Great conversation. That was good.
Yeah.
You do this more often.
Very eloquent defending of anarchy there, bro.
Thank you.
You did very, very well.
Thank you.
Well, now we can't see what we're recording because I only got one screen, but that's cool. Okay, so how much time you guys got?
My parking meter probably ran out.
Okay, why don't we
10
walk?
minutes ago.
Why don't we walk back and then we'll wrap it up? Oh
Yeah,
wow.
man. Anarchy is very interesting. It really forces you to think outside of the box.
Yes.
It's actually almost like an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
You have to think about, well, shit, man. If this isn't going to work this way, if there's no government, then how would it work in a private system?
Yeah.
And I think the people that think that way are going to be the people that implement the way things are going to work in a private system.
If anything, I think we got people that question
Yeah.
what it is we live in right now. Like
course.
why? Why?
Yeah.
Why the fuck?
Yeah. we get, it's like a fish born in water, born in the ocean. Because they were born into it, because it's all they know, they don't even notice they're swimming in water.
Yeah.
I don't know if they actually do or don't, but it's a metaphor. And I think that's what's happening today is we're so used to government, we're so born into it that we don't even know there's another possibility.
People who've been sick their whole lives don't know what it's like being healthy.
Exactly.
And it's kind of fucking crazy when you question the intellectual inconsistencies of why can't LA Fitness send me a bill in the mail for their gym membership?
Yeah.
It's a public gym, man. You paid for it. He's got to pay, pay up. And why can government do that and get away with it?
It's
It's kind of crazy.
we're content with our servitude. We are just like, we're used to it, It's not that bad. We're born with it, my taxes get taken, but it's not too much money. They're used to kill children overseas. That's far away,
And I kind of want to smoke pot, but government.
Kind of.
If I do it in public, then the government will come in and arrest me. But we still need government,
Yes.
even though I can't do these things that I want to do.
It's the big lie that's told to us. You can't live without government, and you need Big Brother to take good care of you. Anarchy equals chaos and bricks through windows and shit on fire. It's a lie told to us to justify the authoritarian parents who tell us what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and how much money they can take from us.
I don't know, man. Walking through this campus, with white government, all these people would start going on a murdering rampage. What do you
Yeah,
think?
man.
That's what I've been told.
It's like if all drugs were legalized, people would start doing meth and fucking heroin.
Gasoline is legal. I don't drink gasoline. I don't know how to eat. Hamburgers are legal. I don't eat that many hamburgers usually.
It's like, where does that come from? Where does this disempowering people need to be babysat? Where the fuck does that come from? I think in many ways it's because serving people who need help, like help from the government, that's an industry on its own. People make a lot of money because they're disempowered, codependent citizens by the millions, think and believe they need a government. It's almost like government is a service being government incorporated the business no one talks about. Government is essentially, except for the fact that they're just force used to fuck they're providing a service. The service is, I don't want to be active in society. I want someone else to fucking do it for me. And then government kind of sweeps in and facilitates that, and then the people vote for it, and then they provide the service, and the people vote for it. So it's like a service. It's a need that's being met.
Right. And that's why I always think it can be easy for me to defend anarchism sometimes because I just allude to that. If we didn't have the U.S. military, we could have militias. If we didn't have Blackwater killing people overseas, we could have them doing these humanitarian missions that supposedly need the U.S. military for.
It's not like Blackwater, they're evil people per se. They just want money. They'll fucking go save kids somewhere else if you're paid them.
Crowdfunding, humanitarian missions overseas. Who knows? Maybe that'll be the private form, basically the private business that takes away the
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll over that.
Yeah, I mean, before you had to go to a bank to get a loan to hopefully, maybe, possibly start your own business. Now, pop it up on the internet, make a video, put it out to the blog, and people from all over the world will fund, even if it's not $10,000, individually they're funding something. If anybody has the possibility, has the potential to actually start something that can be a competition to these giant authoritarian institutions or even giant corporations that have a lot of power and sway in government.
Well, gents.
Yeah. Well, that was absolutely nutty. Let me see what this thing captures exactly. So
Not that bad, actually.
it's got a smaller frame. Yeah. We're probably not even in the camera. Anyways, guys, that was a really good conversation. Awesome stuff. We're gonna do it again. Asking non-English speaking people what democracy means can get interesting. Do you guys provide a service or something? Website? Don't you do like digital something?
Yeah, but that's not the same ballpark. I wouldn't really.
It's up to you, man.
All right, well.
If you guys have, it's up to you if you guys have anything.
I have my forum, ultracointalk.org. If you're into cryptocurrency, I support Ultracoin. It's one of the the fastest confirming cryptocurrency. If you're into cryptocurrencies, you probably know what I'm talking about. So, might be something worth checking out. That's pretty much my plug.
Cool. Anything, Davis?
If you guys want to check out Blacklight Digital and find some cool visual effects videos and sketch videos, we're starting up again, trying to make some funny content that people will enjoy, and hopefully we'll go in a direction that people will, like to see our ideas and concepts and thoughts on life and seeing the work that we make. Anyway, if you feel like checking out some videos like that, it's kind of like Corridor, Freddie Wong style, so if, who knows.
Blacklight Digital?
Yeah, Blacklight Digital.
Cool. Okay. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed it. That was an interesting, kind of more interactive, different thing. Probably be doing more of these in the future. It's interesting to get other people's opinions, and it was certainly fascinating to have this deep conversation with these two dudes. And you know what? I think we actually planted a really legitimate seed. We really planted a seed in their minds. They're gonna probably go home, hopefully, and think about it. And that's all that you fucking need. Later guys, leave your comments below.